So here is the tool I like to use for stenciling. They work very well. They're Cosmetic Wedges, and you see the shape here, pretty easy, and they just are so easy to control if you take it very light and easy. Now you want to be able to go over it in several passes to get the effect you want. This is my Jack Richardson palette paper, but you can use whatever palette you like. And I'm just pouncing it off a little bit. You don't want it too wet. You just want it well loaded. And then you're going to come along and just lightly pounce. You don't want to squeeze it down because it will run under. And you just go along. And see, that lifted that up, and then you reload, but always pounce it off liberally before starting on your piece, and you just go over it. I move the sponge different directions, and then I don't even have to go into the puddle. I'd go right over here to where I had pounced off, and then keep on going. Now you do this in a few layers. It won't take very long for the first layer to dry at all because it's so thin. It's really cool there. If you can see it, you'd see even the crackles show up really well underneath that. Now, I would continue to do the rest, but I'm going to show you how you start going over the first layer. It's already dry enough to go back over. So I just pounce in my puddle to reload, and you see how it's darkening it up without getting it goopy underneath. I will lift this up after a little bit and show you how crisp the lines are. Now this does take a little bit of patience, but it just keeps it nice and crisp around it without that glops. Now I do have a really nice stencil brush, but I have found that I prefer these sponges even over that really nice stencil brush. And they're super inexpensive. I think the newest one I've gotten was like $2 for like 32 wedges. This one was actually 69 cents. So pretty inexpensive. Always use them dry. Do not use them wet. And you can wash them out when you're done and then let them dry thoroughly before you can reuse them over and over again. So that is basically how I stencil. Now I'm going to finish the rest of the sign, and then I will come back in and I will fill in the bridges, and I will show you how I do that. And I'm going to share with you how I fill in the bridges here. This is my plaid one-stroke Donna Dewberry 2 flat. It comes in that multi-pack I'm always referring people to, and I have links to on my website. And I'm just loading it lightly. I don't want it too gloppy. And I'm going to start down here, way down, and then I just pull along the edges there, trying to keep them even. You see, it got a little bit over there, and that's not a big deal because this is a rustic looking sign. But I can show you how to fix that if it does bother you. But here we go. Going, and I'm just layering, and I have filled in the bridges. Let's see, I think that's the only bridge on this sign, on these letterings. I could go ahead and fill the bridge in with the R, but I like the R the way it is. So let me show you how I can fix that little spot. If it bothers you, it's probably, I would let it dry. You can try to fix it while it's still wet with a wet brush. And I need my, this is it's kind of wet, so I come along here with the wet brush and I just kind of mop it up. And see, it's kind of spreading there, but since I am going to create shadowing, that's all good. But you see how it lifted up that area? In fact, I went in a little bit too far. And now I should go back over it with the black. Sometimes trying to fix a mistake, you make them worse. But I'm going to get the black back on my brush, and I'm going to come along here and correct that edge. Now we're all good. Now I will show you how I add shadowing, see if this is dry enough, yes, to the letters to give them a 2D or 3D effect. I don't know what it's called, but it gives them that raised effect. So just give me a moment to get my supplies. In case I failed to mention it, I was using licorice black for the lettering, which I like the licorice in the plaid folk art because it's very opaque. There are a couple of other blacks like charcoal black and lamp black. They're not quite as opaque, or don't seem to be to me. And now for the shadowing, I'm going to use some floating medium and real brown. I typically use burnt umber, but this time I wanted to try the real brown. And so I'm just loading the brush with some floating medium, and I'm just coming along the edge of that real brown, and I'm working it in till I have what I'm looking for as far as it's darker and it fades to lighter. That's what I'm going for. So I start at the bottom and I kind of swoop in and I pull it along the black edge of the letter. On one side, I don't do both sides. I decide which side I want it to be on. I kind of pull a little bit around the corner. You can mop it up with your finger if it's a little too much. And make sure I blend on my palette paper before I continue on. So now but you see how it's darker and then it fades off. That's what you want. You don't want just a stark edge on the outside. Now if you wanted the double lettering, you could have a whole block going around it. I guess that doesn't make sense. I guess I could show you. I have done, well, I did do the raised lettering on one of my tutorials. I'll make sure I link to it here so you can see it. But this, I just want a bit of shadowing. And if you get it too dark, or you feel it's too dark, just go in and just mop it up. Because it takes a little while for the floating medium to dry. So it gives you some time to work with the color. Now here, let's see, I would start on the S, like down here, very thin, and then pull on the chisel and then flatten the brush and let it widen and come out. And then up and around. Reload as you need, and then don't forget to do these little spots on this side. Not everything's going to be exactly the same. If an area is too light, you want to darken it, go back in and darken it. And don't be too precious with this. This is just an effect. It's not live or die, and not everything's going to be exactly shadowed the same. Some areas will be a little bit darker than others, and that's fine. You can start out slower and then move along faster once you get more comfortable with it. Am I still in the camera? Okay, yes I am, sorry. So now I'm going to go along this one. Also I had a color, I think it was Payne's Gray. I don't know if they still have that in the multi-surface paint that I really liked. It did a really good shadowing and it had a blue hint to it. And so if you want to go for a blue shadowing, that works too. And if your brush starts to have too much dark on this side, you can rinse it out and reload. Or even just wipe it out dip in the floating medium, load with your shadow color, and then fingers are a wonderful asset to painting. And you can see the effect that it gives on your lettering of your sign.